What happens when a royal guest walks onto a live talk show and turns a simple interview into absolute chaos? In just 38 seconds, one comment would ignite a firestorm that nobody saw coming. The studio lights were bright that morning. Piers Morgan sat behind his desk, coffee in hand, ready for another day of honest conversation. His show had built a reputation on asking the tough questions, the ones other hosts were too afraid to touch. Today's guest was someone who demanded attention wherever she went. Meghan Markle. She walked onto the set with an air of confidence that filled the room. The audience applauded as she took her seat across from Piers. Her smile was polished, practiced. Piers leaned forward, welcoming her to the show. "Meghan, thank you for joining us today," Piers said warmly. "I know you've got a lot on your mind, and I think our viewers are really interested in hearing your perspective on things." Meghan settled into her chair, crossing her legs. "Well, Piers, I appreciate the platform, though I have to say, I'm a little surprised you invited me on, given some of the things you've said." The temperature in the room shifted slightly. Piers kept his composure, his smile steady. "I've always been honest about my opinions, Meghan, but that's what we do here. We have real conversations, no softballs." "Right," Meghan said, her tone already carrying an edge. "Real conversations. Is that what you call it?" Piers noticed the shift, but pressed forward professionally. "Let's start with something our audience really wants to know. You've spoken a lot about your experience, about feeling unheard. Can you help people understand what that really means?" Meghan's eyes narrowed just slightly. "What it means, Piers, is that people like you have made a career out of twisting my words, out of creating narratives that simply aren't true. And frankly, I'm tired of it." The audience murmured. Piers raised his eyebrows, clearly taken aback by the immediate hostility. "Meghan, I haven't twisted anything. I've reported on what you've said publicly. If there's an issue with the narrative, perhaps we should examine what's actually been said." "Oh, here we go," Meghan interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "The classic Piers Morgan deflection. You attack, and when someone calls you out, you pretend you're just doing journalism." Piers sat back, taking a breath. His professionalism was being tested already, but he maintained his cool. "I'm not deflecting anything. I'm trying to have a conversation. But if you came here just to attack me personally, we should probably address that first." "Attack you?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "Piers, you've spent years attacking me. Every single day, you've had something negative to say. About my family, about my choices, about my character. And now, you want to play the victim?" The energy in the studio was electric now. The crew members glanced at each other nervously. This was escalating far faster than anyone had anticipated. Piers leaned forward again, his voice calm but firm. "Meghan, I've criticized some of your actions and statements. Yes, that's my job. But I've never made it personal in the way you're suggesting. There's a difference between criticism and attack." Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really? So when you questioned my honesty, that wasn't personal? When you suggested I was manipulative, that wasn't personal? Please, Piers, don't insult my intelligence." "I questioned inconsistencies in public statements," Piers clarified, his patience beginning to wear thin despite his best efforts. "That's fair game for anyone in the public eye. You've chosen to live a very public life, Meghan. With that comes scrutiny." "Chosen?" Meghan's voice went up another notch. "I didn't choose to be harassed. I didn't choose to have the media camped outside my home. I didn't choose to have people like you dissecting every single thing I do." Piers nodded slowly. "No, but you did choose to do exclusive interviews. You did choose to make public statements. You did choose to remain in the spotlight while simultaneously complaining about the spotlight. That's the part that confuses people." Meghan stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. The audience gasped. "You know what confuses me, Piers? How someone can be so deliberately obtuse. How someone can sit there and pretend they don't understand the difference between wanting to tell your own story and being hunted by tabloids. Piers remained seated, his voice steady. Meghan, please sit down. Let's have this conversation like adults. Like adults? Meghan's laugh was sharp now. You want to talk about being an adult? Adults don't spend their entire careers tearing down women. Adults don't obsess over people they claim to not even like. The studio went very quiet. Piers's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. That's quite an accusation, and it's completely untrue. I've criticized men and women equally throughout my career. Gender has nothing to do with it. Oh, please, Meghan shot back, still standing. Everyone can see what this is really about. You're bitter. You're angry. And you've decided to take it out on me for years. Piers stood up now, too, but his movements were controlled, measured. Meghan, I think you need to take a step back here. You're making this about something it's not. I invited you on this show to have a real discussion, to give you a chance to speak directly to the audience. But instead, you've come here to make wild accusations and personal attacks. Wild accusations? Meghan's voice was getting louder. Everything I've said is true, and you know it. You've built your brand on cruelty, Piers, on cutting people down, and now you can't handle someone finally calling you out on it. The audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Piers took a deep breath, visibly, trying to maintain his composure. Meghan, I'm going to ask you one more time to sit down so we can have a civil conversation. If you can't do that, then perhaps this interview isn't going to work. Meghan crossed her arms. Maybe you're right. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have expected anything different from you. From me? Piers' voice had an edge now, his patience clearly running out. I've been nothing but professional since you walked in here. You're the one who came out swinging. You're the one hurling insults. I've tried to keep this on track. Professional? Meghan repeated mockingly. Is that what you think this is? You sitting there, acting superior, pretending you're some beacon of journalistic integrity? It's a joke, Piers. You're a joke. The gasps from the audience were audible now. Piers's face flushed, but when he spoke, his voice was controlled, almost eerily calm. I think we're done here, he said quietly. I've given you every opportunity to have a real conversation. But clearly, you're more interested in creating a scene than actually communicating. So I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Meghan's eyes went wide. Excuse me? You heard me, Piers said, his voice firm now. This is my show. I've tried to be respectful. I've tried to give you a platform. But I'm not going to sit here and be insulted and berated on my own program. You need to leave. Meghan looked stunned for a moment, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then her expression hardened. You're kicking me off? Yes, Piers said simply. I am. You've crossed every line of basic decency. You've made this personal. You've hurled accusations, and you've been nothing but hostile from the moment you sat down. I don't have to tolerate that, and neither does my audience. Unbelievable, Meghan said, shaking her head. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment someone challenges you, the moment someone doesn't bow down to you, you silence them. You throw them out. Piers pointed toward the exit. No, Meghan, I'm not silencing you. You've had plenty of opportunity to speak, but you don't get to come onto my show and attack me personally while contributing nothing of substance. That's not a conversation. That's a tantrum. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Meghan's face went red. A tantrum? You're calling me having a tantrum? If the shoe fits, Piers said, his voice cold now. You're standing there, shouting, making wild accusations, refusing to engage in actual dialogue. What would you call it? Meghan grabbed her purse from beside the chair. I'd call it finally standing up to a bully. But clearly, you can't handle that. Security, Piers called out, not taking his eyes off Meghan. Can we please escort our guest out? Two security guards appeared from the wings, looking uncertain. Meghan held up her hand. Don't bother. I'm leaving. I wouldn't stay on this pathetic show for another second. Anyway. Good, Piers said flatly. The door's right there. But Meghan wasn't done. She turned to face the audience directly, pointing at Piers. You all see this, right? You see what he's really like? He can dish it out, but he can't take it. The moment someone actually confronts him with the truth, he runs away. I'm not running anywhere, Piers said, his voice rising now. I'm standing right here. You're the one leaving. You're the one who couldn't handle a simple interview without turning it into a circus. A circus? Meghan whirled back around. You want to talk about a circus? Your entire career is a circus, Piers. You're a clown pretending to be a journalist. The audience gasped again. Piers's hands gripped the edge of his desk. Get out, he said, his voice low and dangerous now. Get out of my studio right now. Meghan took a step toward him. Or what? You'll have me dragged out? That'll look great for you, won't it? If that's what it takes, Piers said. I've asked you politely. I've asked you professionally. Now, I'm telling you. Leave. Now. This is assault, Meghan said suddenly, turning to the cameras. Everyone watching, you're witnessing this. I'm being physically threatened on live television. Piers looked incredulous. Assault? Meghan, nobody has touched you. Nobody has threatened you physically. You're making things up now, which frankly doesn't surprise me. There it is, Meghan said triumphantly. There's the real Piers Morgan, calling me a liar on live television. Thanks for proving my point. You are lying, Piers said bluntly. Right now, in this moment, you are lying. No one has assaulted you. No one has threatened you. You're creating a false narrative because you can't handle being asked to leave. Meghan's voice went quiet, which somehow made it more menacing. You're going to regret this, Piers. Mark my words. You think you can treat people like this and get away with it? Is that a threat? Piers asked, his eyebrows raised. Because it certainly sounds like one. It's a promise, Meghan said. The truth always comes out. And when it does, everyone will see you for what you really are. Piers walked around his desk now, standing between Meghan and the cameras. The truth is already out, Meghan. Everyone watching has seen exactly what happened here. You came on my show. You were hostile from the start. You made personal attacks. And when I asked you to leave, you refused and started making up stories about being assaulted. That's the truth. That's what happened. That's your version, Meghan spat. No, Piers said firmly. That's the version that everyone here witnessed. There are cameras everywhere. There are dozens of witnesses. You can spin this however you want afterwards. But the tape doesn't lie. Meghan looked around the studio, seeming to realize for the first time that she was surrounded by cameras, crew members, and an audience full of people who had watched the entire exchange. Her expression flickered with something that might have been uncertainty. I came here in good faith, she said, but her voice had lost some of its fire. No, you didn't, Piers countered immediately. You came here with an agenda. You came here to attack me. And when that didn't work out the way you wanted, you escalated and escalated until you forced my hand. This is on you, Meghan. All of it. The security guards stepped closer. Meghan looked at them, then back at Piers. Fine, I'm going, but this isn't over. Yes, it is, Piers said quietly. It's very much over. You will not be welcome back on this show. Ever. Meghan laughed bitterly. Like I'd ever want to come back to this disaster. Then we're in agreement, Piers said. Goodbye, Meghan. She stared at him for a long moment, and the tension in that silence was unbearable. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Then Meghan turned sharply on her heel and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking loudly, on the floor. But she stopped at the door, turning back one last time. You know what your problem is, Piers? I'm sure you're going to tell me, Piers said, exhaustion creeping into his voice. You can't stand that I don't need you, Meghan said. You can't stand that your opinion doesn't matter to me, and that drives you absolutely crazy. Piers was quiet for a moment, then he spoke very calmly. Meghan, if my opinion didn't matter to you, you wouldn't have spent the last 10 minutes screaming at me. You wouldn't have gotten this worked up. The truth is, you care very much what people think. You just want to control the narrative, and when you can't, you lash out. Meghan opened her mouth to respond, but Piers held up his hand. No, we're done. You've had your say. Multiple times. Now please, just go. For a second, it looked like Meghan might argue more, but then something in her seemed to deflate. She turned without another word and walked through the door. The security guards followed her out. The studio remained silent for several seconds after she left. Piers stood there, his hand still gripping the edge of his desk. Then he looked up at the audience, at the cameras, and let out a long breath. Well, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. That was something, wasn't it? A nervous laugh rippled through the audience. Piers walked back around to his chair and sat down slowly. I want to apologize to all of you watching at home, he said, looking directly into the main camera. That's not the kind of interview I wanted to conduct. That's not the kind of conversation I hope to have. I invited Meghan here because I believe in giving people a fair platform to speak their mind. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But what you just witnessed was not a conversation. That was someone who came here with the intention of creating conflict. And when I tried to keep things civil, when I tried to actually engage in dialogue, I was met with nothing but hostility and personal attacks. Piers ran a hand through his hair. I've been doing this job for a long time. I've interviewed thousands of people. I've had disagreements. I've had debates. I've had arguments. But I have never, in all my years, had to ask a guest to leave because they couldn't maintain basic respect. The audience was listening intently now. Piers continued, I don't take that decision lightly. But at a certain point, you have to draw a line. You have to stand up and say, this is not acceptable. You don't get to come onto someone's show and berate them, insult them, and make false accusations. He shook his head slowly. What bothered me most was the claim of assault. That was particularly low, because we all saw what happened. Nothing physical occurred. But by making that claim, even falsely, it diminishes real victims of real assault. And that's unforgivable. A few people in the audience nodded. Piers's voice grew stronger. I want to be clear about something. I have no problem with people who disagree with me. I welcome different viewpoints. I enjoy a good debate. But there's a difference between disagreement and disrespect. There's a difference between challenging someone's ideas and launching personal attacks. He leaned forward. Meghan accused me of being unable to handle criticism. But that's not what happened here. I can handle criticism just fine. What I won't handle is someone coming onto my show and treating it like their personal vendetta platform. Piers glanced at his notes, then pushed them aside. You know, I actually had questions prepared. Real questions about real issues. I wanted to talk about her work, her causes, her perspective on things happening in the world. But we never got there. Because from the first moment, it was clear she had no interest in that kind of conversation. The camera stayed tight on his face. And maybe that says something larger about the culture we're living in right now, where some people feel entitled to respect without giving it, where some people think their grievances justify any behavior, where some people believe that their victimhood gives them license to victimize others. Piers' voice was passionate now, but controlled. I reject that completely. Everyone deserves basic human decency. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. And when someone violates that principle as egregiously as what we just saw, there have to be consequences. He sat back in his chair. So yes, I kicked Meghan Markle off my show, and I'd do it again. Because this show, this platform, is built on the idea that we can have difficult conversations. But those conversations require good faith from both sides. They require a willingness to actually listen, not just to hear yourself talk. Piers looked around the studio at his crew, at the audience. I want to thank all of you for bearing with us through that. I know it was uncomfortable. I know it was awkward. But sometimes these things happen. And when they do, you deal with them as professionally as you can. He managed a small smile. Though I have to admit, being called a clown on my own show was a new experience. Another nervous laugh from the audience. This one a bit more genuine. Piers's smile faded. But in all seriousness, what we witnessed today was a masterclass in how not to conduct yourself in public. And I hope people watching, especially young people, take note of that. He checked the clock. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a guest who's actually interested in having a real conversation. Stay with us. The cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed slightly. Piers sat there for a moment, alone with his thoughts. His producer rushed over, concerned, but Piers waved her off. "I'm fine," he said quietly. That was necessary. Around him, the crew was buzzing with energy, talking in hushed voices about what they'd just witnessed. In the audience, people were on their phones, no doubt already sharing what they'd seen. This would be everywhere within minutes. Piers stood and walked to the side of the stage, accepting a bottle of water from an assistant. His hands were steady as he drank, but his mind was racing. He'd made the right call. He was sure of that. But it didn't make it any easier. Someone asked if he was okay. Piers nodded. "Yeah, I'm good. Let's just get through the rest of the show." And that's exactly what they did. When the cameras came back on, Piers was composed, professional, ready to move forward. Because that's what you do. You don't let one difficult moment derail everything else. But as the show continued, as he interviewed his next guest with ease and warmth, everyone in that studio knew they'd witnessed something extraordinary. A moment when civility broke down completely. A moment when entitlement met accountability. A moment that would be replayed and analyzed for days, weeks, maybe years to come. And through it all, Piers Morgan had stood his ground, maintained his dignity, and done what needed to be done. He'd drawn the line and defended it, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it was difficult. Because some lines are worth defending, some standards are worth maintaining, and sometimes the right thing to do is simply to say no more.